Welcome to the Personal Injury Law Show. This is a show that talks about everything to do with personal injuries and relevant to you, the viewer. My name's Tony Carbone. I'm a personal injury lawyer of 30 years experience. With me tonight I've got an insurance partner in a law firm, Nunzio Tartaglia. Good evening, Nunz.
Tony, viewers, welcome.
And the Transport Action Commission partner in a law firm, Maffia.
Good evening, Tony. Good evening, viewers.
Viewers, tonight we've got an episode that really touches our hearts. It's a mother who's come here to talk about her personal loss, so it's a must-see episode. It's really tragic, but she's here to share with us her story to see if she can help others.
But Tony, first, what's in the news?
In the news, there's been a lot of stories. On the issue of the AFL paying out $200,000 for a staff member that was bullied, and the Chiefs are saying they didn't know anything about it. Do you find that extraordinary?
This is staggering, Tony. You've got the AFL has sort of signed off, or Andrew Demetrio has signed off on a $200,000 payout to an injured worker at the AFL. And I think the alleged bullier in this case is Andrew Catterall, I think that his name is. And it's strange because he's denying that he knew anything about it, the bullying and or the settlement. I don't get it.
Well, he's denied it, but also Andrew Demetrio at the time, who's in charge, he also says he's come out saying, you know, I'm absolutely one of his greatest fans. Sure, he might be a bit outspoken, but you can never doubt his ability. So they didn't know about it.
What about emotional intelligence? I mean, if you're paying $200,000 out in ongoing medicals, this person's got to be seriously affected.
But I would have thought that, because this would have been a work cover case, and so they would have done investigations and spoken to the relevant witnesses, and I would have thought the key bullier would have been one of those. So I'm staggered that he had no idea that was happening.
I guess AFL's got a big checkbook.
No, what I'm saying is, doesn't matter how good an employee you've got, isn't it a case of protecting everyone, not just the ones that you think are high flyers? Look after the whole population.
It sounds to me Andrew Demetrio walked out of the AFL at the right time, I think.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Do you know how we had this problem with the berries coming from China and Chile?
The Hepe, yep.
I've got this article here. You're not going to believe the stuff that's been knocked back in recent times. Cheeses from Italy, cooked prawns from China, Swiss cheese from Germany. It goes on and on and on and on. And you know what's in these things? E. coli, listeria, cholera. Yep. It just goes on, Don.
But there's actually, it was, I think it's 200 items of food that were tested. 80 were released before they found the results, and most of the food of the 80 were contaminated. And just not contaminated, with E. coli as well. That's just the worst type of contamination.
A lot of people going to the farmers markets now, not doing anything frozen because it's just safer. So.
Hey, what about this NAB scandal? What's this all about?
Yeah, look, it's sort of come to light a bit later on, but a lot of NAB staff have been either terminated. There's been an investigation into basically inadequate financial advice. It's probably misleading, and it's opened up a raft of investigations and probably litigation, I would have thought.
Don, the Commonwealth Bank have got something similar to this going on at the moment, haven't they?
Most banks have, yes.
Yeah, and it seems to be a common theme these days with these financial planners. What's the go? I mean, you you trust them with your hard-earned cash.
That's right, and they're rogue advisors. But I guess, how do you protect yourself from these type of rogue advisors?
I've got to be honest with you, a couple of I've met, they've tried to explain to me what they do and they can't tell me what they do. So
I think it's just research, isn't it? Research into who you're going to. Surely there's got to be other mechanisms the bank can put in place as well.
We find a lot at the firm, you know, obviously we specialise in superannuation matters, and we find that a lot of clients come in and thought they had, you know, TPD insurance or had, you know, income protection or trauma cover, and then they didn't. And
they should bring you to make sure.
Yeah, I was told I did, I told I wasn't, and they're not sure what's exactly happening. So you need to get sometimes a second opinion.
Yeah.
Just be careful when you're dealing with financial planners and everyone else giving you financial advice. It's hard to make the money, easy to lose. 500 still on the road, 0.05, Don. There's bungled penalty notices going out. People that shouldn't be on the road are on the road. People that should be on the road are off the road.
Well, in 2007, new legislation passed whereby if you are between 0.05 and 0.07, you lose 10 demerit points without licence cancellation. But for those people who were caught over the 0.05 to 0.07, actually licence were cancelled, which was incorrect according to law. So they've gone back and they realised that 200 motorists had lost their licences in circumstances where they shouldn't.
And people that should have lost their licence haven't lost their licence.
Correct.
It's a circus, isn't it?
Yeah, look, you know, those poor motorists, the 200 that actually had their licence suspended.
They've lost
been
jobs.
Off the road, financially, it's been massive financial losses to them.
But the other side is obviously we know even just slightly over the alcohol limit 0.05 can be horrific in circumstances, you know, road trauma
Of course,
and all that.
but do we know why there was this bungle? Have they explained why?
It's the section of the Act that they're relying on, isn't it?
I think
No,
the
we
police
know-
just got the wrong section. They weren't
Yeah.
realise it. So
Someone
let's go on for 7
definitely-
years.
Nunz, thanks for coming on board.
Thanks, guys.
Viewers, we go to a sponsors break, so stay tuned. After the break, we've got Dr Fiona Reidy. Viewers, welcome back to the show. As I said before the break, we're very fortunate tonight to have Dr Fiona Reidy. Good evening, Dr Reidy.
Hi, how are you?
Viewers, as I said, Dr Reidy lost her son in 2011 in a car accident to an unlicensed driver. Those unfortunate few minutes where he got a text message, left just before midnight, went into a car, and the car struck a tree, and sadly, you lost your son. Doctor, with your loss, you've developed the courage to write a book called The Weeping Woman, and the whole objective behind this is to assist people that are traumatised and suffering, people that have lost loved ones in car accidents. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I suppose, Tony, I started really not with the intention of writing a book. I think that what I found through the writing of the book was that everybody deals with grief differently. Some people like me read and write, and other people do art, other people stay at home. There's just a variety of things that people do. And writing the book was at first me trying to make sense of things, and as then I went along and I worked with the Road Trauma Support Services and interviewed 6 other very brave and special women about their experiences, I thought that there would be a benefit in actually putting it into a book to give other people an understanding of what the experience is, and that it doesn't really just stop after a particular period of time.
Don, Dr Reidy's very credentialed in writing a book and also talking about the plight of people that have been through a situation where they've lost a loved one in a car accident. I mean, if you go for a background, it's extraordinary.
It is, and we're talking about traumatic grief.
Yes, yes.
So traumatic grief as a result of obviously sudden death, which can result from car accidents in this case, but also suicide and murder. So it's coupled in the most extreme type of grief that someone could experience because it's sudden. It is, I think, Fiona, you describe it as a choiceless event. You weren't aware of it. It just one night went to bed and the next morning this whole chain of events have happened.
That's right.
And you've detailed in your book, but not only obviously the event that occurred, but the process that followed afterwards. Could you describe, like, it's sort of drawn out because not only do you have the funeral, but also the court cases that followed with the charging of the driver was charged culpable driving. So, Fiona, would you be able to describe how does that all? How do you deal with it? How could you deal with it?
I don't think while you're in it, you know what you're doing really. I think, you know, waking up to, you know, the police pounding on your door at 5 in the morning and, you know, realising that your son's never going to come home is not something that makes any sense. And I think that you're in a daze. I think that you just get through things for a period of time, and you know, we were terribly well supported. We certainly had support from the Transport Accident Commission, the Road Trauma Support Services Victoria, families, friends. But at a point, things for other people settle down, their lives move on and go on, and your life doesn't. And I think for us, the court matters were very protracted. The young man involved didn't plead guilty until the plea hearing, in fact. So we were facing the prospect of a full trial, and it just seemed to reinforce the trauma of the way in which Rory died. He was such a quiet, gentle boy. He never went out. This was the first time he'd ever done anything like this. And at the same time, we were like living on a dual track. It was life as other people saw us and our lives, and all of the toing and froing with the DPP and the court case, and all of that went on with most people not realising probably what was happening for us in our lives. And I think you're right about traumatic death. I think that we all lose people. We lose, I've lost grandparents and, a parent, and death is something that, when you have time to adjust and consider what might happen to someone, is very different from, having a very traumatic loss with a horrific end to a young person's life. It's really different.
Fiona, you've got the husband and 2 daughters. How are they coping with the loss?
Oh, look, I'm a busy project person. I suppose I've worked through the book, writing the book. I'm back at work again. It's hard some days. It's not like it's easy. They've all addressed it in their own different way. I mean, my youngest daughter was only 8 when Rory died, and I think for a young child, it's very hard to conceptually understand what this all means, and I think I see as she gets older her understanding it more, so the impact ripples on. My older daughter, was about to start a course and has had some discontinuity in being able to finish the studies that she'd started. My husband's very affected.
In your book, you also detail how initially a lot of people pass on the condolences, friends and families, and then after the years go by, that group of friends or that size of friends have sort of reduced down to so many. So it just goes to show that a lot of people also lacked understanding on how people deal with grief.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, it's not their fault. It's just the community we live in too. I think and I think that was partly then in working with the other women and writing up the book to try and give some insight into other people about how it goes. And I think that we all who have had traumatic loss get very good at having a very good mask on every day, because you on the other hand have to keep going with your life, and particularly if you've got other children and you've got something that you've got to get done, you just get by and people assume you're okay, and they want you to be okay. They do.
Fiona, your son was a very interesting young man. He travelled up to Darwin at one stage, is that correct?
Central Australia,
okay.
Yeah.
And he wanted to deal with the plight of the integration of Aboriginals and our Australian society. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, I suppose we saw in Rory probably in the couple of years before he did die a real awakening of a social conscience and a real interest in Aboriginal culture and community, and so I suppose we decided that one of the things that we could do after he died was to do a bit more work on that, and in a way it was our connection that we could keep with him and his values, which would be able to keep influencing the things that we did in our lives too.
Don, it's amazing how the loss of such a young life can have such a devastating effect on family, friends and everyone else. But, we've got to go to a sponsors break. After the break, I just want to talk about the weekend we had. Viewers, stay tuned. After the break, we're going to continue this discussion with Dr Fiona Reidy and Dr Maffia. Welcome back to the show. Don, we've had one of the worst weekends on our roads. There's been 7 deaths, and last night there was a lady with her child and 2 daughters are in intensive care at the Royal Children's Hospital. Is it a question of a message being lost, or is it that we're complacent on the road, or we're distracted by phones and maybe we're tired when we're driving? I don't know. I mean, when they're young, I guess you can put it down to a lack of experience. Is that the best way to put it?
Yeah, I suppose, I don't understand the risky behaviour. I suppose the adolescent brain doesn't really form into an adult brain till 25. So I think that there's a lot of research that tells us that young people under 25 are going to do risky things, and it's very hard to know how to intervene with that. I just think the pace of life maybe for older people, the busyness, the distraction, I don't know why people, lose that connection, because the consequences are catastrophic.
And Don, with the advent of this mobile phone, it seems like society's under more pressure. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, correct. Distractions in the car.
People expect to get you all the time.
Yeah.
That's sort of, and if they can't get you straight away, they actually get upset.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
But in Rory's case, Fiona, it probably wasn't a risky decision. He was just going out with friends. It's just that
it was doing something stupid. Yeah, doing something stupid, but the consequence was enormous.
Yeah, of course. And the road trauma support services, you were pretty much in contact with them and your family straight away. Straight after the event. How did it come about to get in contact with? So a lot of our viewers wouldn't be aware that there is this road trauma support service that deals with these type of circumstances, not only death but being involved in transport accidents.
That's a great question, I think it also goes to the role of extended family, and in my case, employers. My boss at work at the time, she'd been on holidays interstate, contacted her, told her what had happened, and she actually contacted the Road Trauma Support Service for us. It's a free service for anyone who's lost somebody through road trauma. It applies to the whole family. They can do phone counselling. In our case, really flexibly, can meet over a coffee, can meet at your house, can go for a walk and have a talk about things. And at this stage, it's not time limited. So 3 years down the track now, we could contact our counsellor if one of us needed to have a talk. And I think it's a fabulous service. It is funded via the TAC. And, they'll take phone referrals from anyone.
Fiona, you've established a Rory McCaffrey Reconciliation Fund. Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, as we were saying before, Rory had that real interest in Aboriginal issues and reconciliation. And it was, ironically, just in organising the funeral, they said to us, do you want flowers or do you like, donations to a cause? And we didn't have any other cause, but we immediately thought that that would mean something to Rory. And so really in the research I did for the book, that I think that remembering and creating a connection between the person that you've lost is really important in grief and bereavement. So we started doing this work, and it's just been a fabulous way of really infusing our lives with the things that were of value to Rory. And viewers might be interested to just Google Spreading the Message. We did a really good project in the northern suburbs of Geelong last year that took a group of Aboriginal kids and really worked with them around their culture, and it was an art project, and we've done a DVD, and there's a book resource as well with that, and you can just Google it and find it. And we hope that that's the sort of thing people could replicate. So we fundraise. We've got a sub-fund through the Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation, and that was a great way of it being managed, that we could get donations and put them in there, and then look at doing some work with that community. And it's been fantastic for the whole family. All of the girls and my husband have also been involved with that.
Don, it's a great memory for Rory that this foundation's there, because it means his life goes on, really.
Yes,
in a lot of ways, there's a legacy. Just on that issue there, I'd like to raise this. They're currently investigating whether Vic Roads are going to allow shrines where people have passed. And I spoke to Fiona before, and she said that she doesn't particularly want one where Rory passed, but...
I guess, Tony, my view is that, as we're talking about tonight, everyone deals with grief differently, and someone might deal with grief by having a shrine on the side of the road. I think they mentioned the Majura children that were passed, and that's one way she was dealing with the grief. And that's where I think, in particular, dealing with plaintiffs for 15 years, it's not everyone understands that you don't deal with trauma. Trauma's not the same for everyone.
No, it's
everyone
different.
deals with it differently. And like Fiona has done, she's written a book or writing research.
Well,
others
just on
deal with
that,
it.
just on that point there, Don, the grandfather of those three boys, the Farquharsons,
Yep.
he said, "How can someone tell people how to grieve?" Which is a fair
Correct.
comment. I mean, that's a point you made before.
Oh,
Fiona,
absolutely,
that,
And I think there's just a lack of understanding of how people deal with grief and in sensitive ways as well. I mean, if Vic Road's coming out saying you cannot pay tribute to a victim by putting a roadside vigil, or that person, that might be very traumatic to that person in itself. So
I think it's something that Vic Road should stay away from this time. I mean, it's just too touchy. It's something that you got to leave to the individual, isn't that correct?
Yeah, I think it is. You know, it wasn't what we would have done, but in reading and talking to the other mothers and reading research, I think that a lot of young people, it's very meaningful for them.
We talk about. I'm one of these types that believes in prevention rather than cures, and I always say to my kids, "Be careful on the roads. Watch what you do." Is there a message that you'd like to send, Fiona, in terms of? I mean, the young ones don't listen anyway, sadly. I know you'd like them to think that they do, but I guess if you don't keep drumming it into them, it's never going to work, is it? Is there anything you'd like to say in that regard?
Oh, look, I'd echo what you've said, Tony, and I think also that in this case for Rory, speed was really the factor that made the difference, the extreme speed that the driver was, clocked at. They resulted in the injuries that killed Rory, so I think that that's something people have to have in their mind. I completely concur with the go slower speed campaigns.
Fiona, your book, The Weeping Woman, where can you buy this? I highly recommend it, viewers, because it is it's a hard read, but it's something that I think you should do.
I self-published, so I had some assistance from the Victims of Crime Fund, so that enabled me to self-publish it. You can go to www.bookpal.com or Smashbooks if people have a Kindle or something that they'd like to read it. But you can just Google Weeping Woman, Fiona Reidy, and it'll pop up.
Don, I'd just like to, from a compensation perspective, I really don't want to go into too much detail. Do the families get compensated in these circumstances, or
correct. If
there's amendments to the legislation?
Well, the TSC will pay for funeral expenses and some counselling under what they call the death benefits claim.
But what about the nervous shock
Well,
component?
if there's a nervous shock or mental injury resulting from the trauma, then the person has entitlement to claim for medical expenses, lost wages, and also if there's a permanent impairment, a lump sum, but also has access to claim compensation or damages for pain and suffering and income loss if they've sustained a serious injury.
Okay.
Which, as we know, we discussed on the show, the tests have changed a little bit over the years, but I guess that's another episode, Tony.
No, of course. Fiona, just treatment for the family. What are your family members receiving by way of treatment?
Oh, look, we've used everything we can get our hands on, and that's what I'd advise people to do. We've certainly had psychologists and counsellors, either through the Road Trauma Support Service or private practitioners, and certainly the TAC assistance has covered the costs of those things.
Fiona, thank you for coming on board and sharing us your sad story, but also enlightening the public, I guess.
My pleasure.
Don, always a pleasure. Viewers, thanks for watching. Go to our Twitter, YouTube and Facebook. Stay tuned for future episodes, and always remember to stay safe.